Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Design for Drupal Boston 2020 12th anniversary. We are today doing our October webinar. The October webinar, the title is Essential Sketch Skills from Branding to Development. We're really excited to have Jennifer Smith with us for today's webinar. This year has been a little bit different for Design for Drupal. Back in June, when we typically have our in-person event, we did have an online event on June 10th. Christina Cumulus gave a great keynote on design, usability, accessibility, and compatibility. She talked about the Drupal Claro admin theme. If you go to designfordrupal.org, there is a link to her slides and to her recording. That was a really good webinar. Keynote. So, take the time to check that out. Part of what Christina did that day, and we did that day, was we had a 24-hour global contribution day where people could contribute, whether it was code, front-end, theming, design, documentation. People contributed to Drupal on that day. You can, still contribute any day, all the time. There are some Slack channels where you can go to contribute to the Claro theme I spoke about. That's Admin UI channel on Slack. And Olivero is D9-theme. Mike Herschel gave a webinar a couple months ago on Olivero. Very exciting news that was just put into Drupal 9.1 as an experimental module. So that's really exciting news on the Olivero theme. And that makes the user experience when you first install Drupal a lot cleaner, a lot nicer looking. So there's a nice brand new theme there for folks to use. And there are mentors available on these channels to help you out. So if you're interested in learning or in, contributing, definitely hop onto those Slack channels, and mentors are available to help you out. We have one of these webinars each month. So we had the one-day contribution day and the keynote by Christina. Every month we now have a webinar. If you go to designfordrupal.org, design the number 4 Drupal.org, there are recordings of all our prior webinars. Our upcoming ones on November 11th, we're pleased to have Johanna Bates and Clayton Dewey. They will be discussing consentful UX. And then in December on the 2nd, we have Brian Perry, and he'll be talking about web components through the eyes of a newcomer. So sign up for those webinars at design4drupal.org. And as I said, you can go look at all the prior webinars as well. Community upcoming events. The Drupal community is one of the best parts of Drupal. It's where you meet folks, where you learn a lot of training, a lot of great information sharing at these events. The next upcoming one happens to be a local one. It's New England Drupal Camp. It's on November 6th. It's on a Friday. This year, because it's virtual, we're going to do something a little different. It's going to be a virtual BOFCon, where BOF is birds of a feather. So we've accepted a number of sessions or BOFs where somebody will lead the session. They'll have some questions they'll pose to talk about a specific subject, and then participants that are there in that particular Zoom room will discuss that topic. So it's a great way to share information, to learn, and to meet folks. So go to nedcamp.org, nedcamp.org, to find out more information about that. We're really excited. The keynote is going to be Better Together, How the Drupal Community Can Change the World. And that's being led by Heather Rocker, who's the Executive Director of the Drupal Association. So we're really excited to have Heather come and speak to NedCamp. So please register and check that out. DrupalCon Europe, which is a large Drupal conference, is December 8th to 11th. It's virtual this year. The link is events.drupal.org/Europe 2020. Just go and look up DrupalCon Europe and you'll find that link. Keynotes have been announced. There's 4 keynotes in the session. The schedule is available. That's a 4-day event. So that's really good to, if you can attend that as well. There's local meetups. The Boston one is the first Tuesday of the month. I say local, as is this webinar. Internationally, anybody that wants to join can. That's on the first Tuesdays of the month at 7 p.m. So join that as well. Thank you to our sponsors. I'm going to go through these quickly. Oh, sorry. Whoa, hang on. I missed this one. Code of conduct. Let's talk about this before the sponsors. One of the great strengths of the Drupal community is our inclusiveness. So we want to make sure that everybody attends these webinars. They're virtual, but we want to make sure that everybody has a welcoming experience. Treat everybody with dignity and respect. And if there's any issues at all, please contact Patrick or myself, and the number is there, 908-4, the number 4, Drupal. We don't expect any issues, but if there are any, just let us know. Thank you to our sponsors, Redfin Solutions, Lullabot, McPhee Design, AGI, Dev Collaborative, Oomph, Isovera, Talking Drupal, 108 Degrees, and Oddbird. So thank you so much to these sponsors who help us put this webinar series on. Spread the word around about today's event on social media. Use the hashtag D4D Boston. And thank you again for joining us for this webinar. And remember to just be kind to everybody that you interact with. There'll be a Q&A session at the end after Jennifer's talk. Use the Q&A feature to add questions during the webinar. The chat feature is turned off. So if you go to Q&A in Zoom, that's where you add your questions. And Patrick's going to be monitoring those, and if they're relevant to something Jennifer is presenting on at the moment, he will ask Jennifer that question real time. Otherwise, we'll ask the questions at the end of the presentation. So please feel free to join in and ask anything you have. And that's it. So I'm going to pass it off to Patrick to introduce Jennifer.
Thanks, Leslie. Our speaker today is Jennifer Smith, and Jennifer is a co-founder of the American Graphics Institute, which offers training courses on Adobe products, HTML, user experience, and design, among other things. As a consultant, Jennifer has worked with several Fortune 500 companies from around the world, and she is also a user experience designer, Photoshop expert, educator, and author. And she has written over 20 books, including several in the Adobe Creative Suite for Dummies series. And today, Jennifer is here to share a live demonstration of the Sketch app and how you can use it in your design workflows to provide more helpful designs and prototypes to your development teams. Jennifer has actually helped us at Design for Drupal in the past. She has supported us and presented at several conferences, and we're really excited to have her back this year. Jennifer, thank you very much, and thank you for coming today.
Sure. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen at this point and just jump in. So yeah, here we go. I want to give you as much information as I can within this time period about Sketch, high level. But as was mentioned, if you have a question about something that I am doing, go ahead and post it. And if Patrick sees that it's about something that I'm actually doing right now that we need some clarification on, I'm fine with being interrupted. So let's go ahead and move forward. So hopefully some of you guys have some experience with Sketch. If not, I'm going to still introduce it. I'll be talking through as if you have not. But the whole reason for Sketch is to help you to prototype things without actually going through code. And so if you're an Illustrator user, it's very similar to Illustrator. What I want to talk about today is how much better it is than Illustrator in that you can save components and symbols and colors and all sorts of things that allow you to build what's called either a design system, or maybe you want to call it a style guide or whatever it may be. But the reason that Sketch is so popular, especially for branding, is because I can save colors that I want to use all the time, logos I want to use all the time, even entire components with objects in them that can be interchanged as I go along the way. I can create styles as well. And then I can save it as a library and share it with 100 other people if I want on my team. And if I go and I update a color because maybe it's not correct or we're swapping it, all 100 people get notified that there's been a change, and they can either opt to update their particular files or just say, no, I'm going to keep mine the way it is. But the the opportunity to keep branding standards, logo swaps, color updates, all of that dynamic throughout the whole design system is phenomenal. And if you build your sketch file correctly, you can even use things like Zeppelin, a product that works as a plugin in Sketch that will allow you to take those items right to development, where the development team can copy the CSS and download some of the logos, that sort of thing, making it really easy to transition from design to development. So what I'm going to do, I think the best thing to do is for me to create something from scratch. And that way you can kind of see how this all works together. And so to do this, I've just launched Sketch, and you can see that I can create a new document here. I'm going to just go ahead and click on the plus sign. And it starts out with one big page. You could essentially put all of your work on one page, but when we're working with design systems, you'll see that I'll give you an example of where I create multiple pages, one maybe just for colors, one maybe for logos, one maybe for my text styles, just to help me to keep what's called a library consistent and easy to organize. So I'm just going to start out, and I'm going to start building, pretend I'm building an app. And as a designer, I frequently just throw everything down and then worry about the organization later. I'm going to try to do that simultaneously as I work right now, just to show you how the flow can work. So in order to create something in here, I need an artboard, and I could choose insert artboard, or fortunately, they have really easy keyboard shortcuts. I can just press the letter A, and it comes up on the right with all the different size artboards that I can work with. And in this case, just because I'm on a laptop and I want to conserve space, I am going to go to responsive web and just say, I want a mobile artboard, and this is what I am starting to work on. Now, those of you who have Illustrator experience, the keyboard shortcuts, most of them work in here. So I'm just pressing the space bar down and repositioning this, or I can even pinch and zoom on my trackpad to resize this a little bit. But this is my first screen, so I'm just going to call it, I want to rename it, so I'm pressing Command R, or I can double click over here, and I'm going to call it Home. And if you are from the design end, you have to remember to keep things consistent for naming, no spaces, no weird characters, because a lot of this will be translated right to assets for development. But I'm going to go ahead and pretend that I do have a logo. I can either import one in, or I just want to show how I can even come in. Maybe I've been working on some ridiculous logo in Illustrator, and I decide I want to use it. I can do one of two things. I can copy this, and I can bring it in to Sketch and just paste it. And you'll see that it maintains all the vector capabilities in here. So if I decide that I want to change the ear color or nose color or whatever, I can do that right here. But I'm going to jump right in to show you something. I want to jump right in to show you that if I know I'm going to use this often, that I should probably do what's called create a symbol. And how I do that is I just can simply come up to the top and click on create a symbol when I have this selected, and I can call it dog logo. I'm leaving it no layout. I'll explain that later. And you'll see that it has a check mark that says send symbol to symbols page. And as soon as I do this, you'll see a new page appears. All that page is a place to store my reusable items. So I've got this in here, and maybe I'm going to use it several times, different sizes, whatever. Whoops, let me hold the shift key down as I grab a corner. But I am just using this in a couple different ways. Now I'm holding my option key down to clone, just so that it's just like in Illustrator, same keyboard shortcuts. But the reason I'm doing this is because maybe somebody comes back to me and says, you know, the ears are here, the mouth and stuff is supposed to be this blue color. And so if I double click on it, it automatically takes me to that symbols page. You can see it says return to instance. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to click on this guy. Maybe I'll take the mouth and I'll add a color. Now, here's another thing. Not only can I use this symbol over and over again. And as you can imagine, if I come in here and I choose a different color and I return to the instance, of course, it's updated throughout my entire project. If you don't like this, you can always right-click and unlink it from the symbol. But here's the other thing I just want to mention. I'm going in, and maybe even this color is important to me. So I click on, let's say I'll click on an ear, and I'll go to choose a color, and you'll see that I can even do what's called create a color variable. This is a new feature in Sketch, but if I choose a color variable and I click on a certain color, what it does is the same thing if you've ever worked in Illustrator where you create a global color that will now update every instance when you make one change. So I'll just go back in. You can see it's updated. I have one now blue ear. I'm going to go back in. I'm going to click on the other ear. Let me go grab it this way. And I'm going to go select one of the colors. Oh, I should have saved that. Let me go back to that color. So come in here. I'm just going to see here. Let's make sure that I've got it. Create color variable. I thought I did one, but I obviously did not. So let me go ahead and do this again. But the, we'll call it blue. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this to some other things as well. And you'll see that I'm selecting this other year. And there's a keyboard shortcut in here that makes this really easy to share colors. If I press Control-C, I can even cross over and I can pick up a color. The cool thing about this is even if I press Control-C, I can sample colors outside of Sketch to make this easy. So if you don't have your branding colors and you're quickly trying to build a prototype, you can actually see your website or whatever and choose colors that even come from branded material that exists right now. So anyway, I've got this color here, and you'll notice that down here at the bottom it says edit variable. And if I choose that maybe it needs to be a little bit more green and I click update, all right, this is a beta feature. It should have updated this automatically. We're going to let this go, but it is acting a little funky. Here we go. Let me go ahead and make sure that I select them both. Yeah, for some reason, it did not have the other one selected as the variable. Maybe I should have not have shown that new feature right away. I'll show you better ways to save colors. That should be working soon. If you know anything about Sketch, it updates every 30 days. They are constantly updating the product, which means that sometimes you do get a little bit, you do get some bugs. But the cool thing is that it's only $99 a year, but I know people who just keep updating, just keep getting the free 30-day version, and they never buy it because it keeps updating and then you get another download. So anyway, comes with some bugs, but we're going to ignore that for right now. I'm going to go ahead back to my instance though, and you'll see that now I've got all of those items that have been saved in there. Let me show you the standard way that I would save a color, and we'll start building something that we could use as a library. But if you have a branded color that you use all the time, you could essentially just create a rectangle, and I could go to the insert menu and I could go to shape and I could say rectangle, or I can just press the letter R and make a rectangle. And if there's a color that I'm going to use all the time, I can either put the value in down here, the hexadecimal value, red, green, blue. I can click on the particular color and just leave it at that. But you'll notice that up here in my properties panel, and if I haven't been clear on how this works, everything dynamically changes in your properties panel depending upon what you have selected. So right now I've got that rectangle and it's telling me that the fill is red, but it also says something about an appearance, and it says no layer style. If I know that I need this color for the future, maybe this is our branded color, maybe I've got 3 branded colors, I can click on the create button and I can call this color / red. Now, what this allows me to do is to save this color so that, let's say that I go and I make another rectangle someplace and I want that color, I can just come in here and choose this document. Can you provide me with that exact same color of red? Okay, so it makes it easy for you to find colors that you use all the time. Now, if you notice, when I named this, I put color/red. And what that did was it created in this document a submenu, which means that if I come in here, and let's just choose another color. I'll say, oh, this time I want to put a blue color in. If I come up here to layer style and I say, all right, I want to create a new one. And this time I'm going to call it color blue. And then I'm going to create one more. I'm going to go in and choose like a yellow color. And then I'm going to say create color yellow. So what does this do? It allows me to do this. If I go back and I create another rectangle and I want to use a color, one of my branding colors, I can, of course, go to my appearance panel and I can click on the arrow and choose that in this document, I have a color I saved. And then you can see that I can choose any one of those. So it gives me the opportunity to save different properties in an organized way. Now, I use Adobe Xd as well, which is very similar, but it doesn't allow that little tiny feature of putting that slash in to create submenus. And you'll notice that if I go to my appearance, you'll see that I have Apple iOS in here, some design assets, navigation. But if I go to the Apple iOS UI, you'll see that they've got somebody, when they created this name, created iOS system grays / and then created all these different colors. By the way, these are referring to libraries, and I'm going to eventually get at the end of the session, I'm going to show you how you create those libraries, but they're essentially just sketch files that you have saved items in that you want to share with other people. So I've got my colors here. Let's go and build something else. And so I created this as a symbol, which means, of course, it's an updatable component that I can reuse over and over again and make changes. But let me do another one that's a little bit more complex. So maybe I want to create a button. And I'll just take this button, this rectangle that I made, and I'm going to go put some text in. And so I could choose insert text or just press the letter T and click and say, you know, I'll just call it a generic name, button, because I don't know what it's going to say. I'm going to use it a whole bunch of times. And I'm going to select both of these items. And I'm just going to use the align feature in the properties panel to center them and maybe just nudge this up a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to make the button kind of small. I'm going to select this again, center it. Okay, so I know I want to use this button over and over again, but here's an issue. What if your word becomes bigger than the button? This is all resolved right in Sketch. So if I decide that I'm going to use this button over and over again, I can go ahead and make this a symbol as well. But this is when I'll come in here and say, can you provide me a layout? Horizontal center layout. What essentially this means is, can you dynamically let it respond to whatever the content is? And so if I choose this and I click OK, and I use this button, you'll see that it responds to the size. Okay, so here's the thing that's super cool. If you ever created something and it's not responding, you can always double click on it. And then when you go in, or here, let me go back. I double clicked on the text. Let me double click on the symbol. I'll just go to the symbols panel. It thinks I want to edit the text. I'll click on it here. But when I'm in here and I select the symbol itself, if I forgot to do that, I can change that here. If there's a minimum width, like I'm like, hey, you know what? Don't ever make it less than 10 pixels or whatever you choose. You can also choose that there as well. And then I can go back to the page. So you can go in and edit something after you created it in order to get that dynamic response. Now, you'll notice that in Sketch, you have overrides. So if I were to use this button several times, you'll see that I can change the text on it easily, see more, without actually having it affect the other symbols. And that's because if you look over here to the right, in the properties panel, it has the opportunity to do an override for that. It even has an opportunity for you to choose different saved colors that you've created as well without affecting that whole huge symbol. But yet, if I do go into the symbols and I click on that rectangle, I could come in here and say, can you round the corners? Here, let me make sure I get that. So yeah, there you go. Now you can see it. And if I go back to page 1, they're all rounded. So it didn't change the overrides, but it let me go in and it let me change that original one as well. Okay, so that's your standard symbol. Let's take this a little bit further. And so I'm going to go ahead and maybe, I'm going to create another artboard. So I'm going to press A, mobile, and now I've got a second one. And you can build your whole layout here, and I'll show you how you can connect these together, because maybe I'll have the see more button go to show me a, gallery of dogs or something on the second page. But in order to do that, I want to show you something that, how things are built correctly in Sketch are that you would create symbols within symbols within symbols so that you can swap things out really easily. And so I'm going to go in and just choose the insert image this time before I copy and paste it from Illustrator. And I'm going to go ahead and put a picture of a dog in here. And it's a little big. Let's make sure that it looks like, where'd you go? There he is. Okay. There we go. If you notice, what happened was you can see everything here in the layers panel. This is representing every object that is on your screen. And as you put additional objects in, they come up at the top of the stack. But if any of you saw what happened there was this guy actually fell off the artboard. And so I just had to drag him in to say, you're on this particular artboard. So this is kind of nice. Like you can actually see what items are on each artboard easily. So I've got this guy in here, and maybe I know I'm going to use a picture of a dog often. So I might resize him a little bit and then go ahead and create a symbol, and I'll call it dog image. I don't need a layout for this. It's just an individual dog. But now maybe I'm creating some sort of list box. And so I'm going to make a rectangle. And I do design, but I'm not doing design right now. I'm just throwing stuff down. So don't judge my talent on what you're seeing here, because I know this is going to be kind of gross. So got this item. I'm pressing Command Option left bracket, which means send to the back, or you could just drag and drop items within your layers panel to do that as well. And I'm noticing here, we'll just put this dog here. I'm going to put, I'm pressing T to put text, and I'm going to give it a name. Excellent. So I've got several items here, but I'm going to have a list of these perhaps. And in fact, maybe I'll even put another symbol in representing how long this dog has been here. So I'm going to go back to Illustrator, and I'll take this hourglass and I'll copy it, and I'll put it back in here and paste it and make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to make this a symbol as well. Hourglass. And I'll put this in here. So as you're working, if you know you're going to reuse things, it takes a second to make them a symbol. And maybe I even want like a time one here. I'll take this guy as well. So anything I think that I'm going to use more often than not, I should go in and just make it a symbol. It's not a big deal, but it allows me to easily swap these things out later. Once I've made it a symbol, I don't even need it on the screen. We're going to get rid of this stuff. So now this is what I was talking about. I've got, this is a symbol, this is a symbol, this is just text, but I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to go ahead and say, create a symbol out of all these, dog list box. And I can even say, I can give this a layout as well. Like if I think that it's going to grow and get bigger or smaller, I can even tell it to do that automatically and create. So here are a couple things that are super easy to do in Sketch. One is I can option drag this, and you'll see that as I'm option dragging this, do you see it gives me indicators that the spacing is the same. The cool thing about this is that, here, let me just go off my page. We're going off the page because we wanted to scroll. Even like right now, since I'm off the page, it's not giving me, there we go. Even if I go off the page, and even if I haven't done this evenly, I can select all these. And of course, I can always go up and just choose, can you distribute these evenly? The other thing you'll notice is that you get these really cool symbols so that in between, once you've set this up, so that you can easily resize these as well. So what I've done here is I flew off the artboard. And so if I go and I play this now or preview, see it actually, oh, let me make sure I didn't do anything weird to this. Mobile, yeah. Let me make my artboard a little bit longer. There we go. But when I preview this, it actually will scroll. So I can show that. The reason I built this though is because I wanted you to see that I could come in here and you'll see all the overrides. Like, oh, let's see. No, that one should be a clock here. Now, you're noticing some distortion. This is also things that you can control. Notice if I go back to symbols, I can click on that clock and I can say, can you always fix that size so that it doesn't do that? So you can control all these things really easily. And now you'll see it's popping in fine. But I'll go to this one maybe, and we also want that symbol. But you'll see that I can easily swap here. I can easily swap my symbol. So if you're creating something like a navigation bar where you want to switch things depending upon the screen that it's on, if all the components of that component are made from symbols, it makes it really easy for you to go through and change these things, or even say, on this one, we don't want a symbol. And it just disappears on that. So allowing you to keep that consistency here. The other cool thing about this is that if I am building this as a prototype, I don't feel like switching the dog image for another image over and over again. I can even do this. I can go to my preferences, Sketch preferences, and I can say, I want a library. No, not a library. I want data. Sorry. I want to go and create some data. And all you have to do is click on add data and go back. I'm going to choose a whole folder of dog images. I'm going to click on this and say, open it. I just created the ability to go in, select all these images or all these symbols, go to data and say, can you switch this and put a different dog in each? And all it did was when I created that data folder, I just selected a folder of images. I didn't do anything special or complicated. But when then I applied, when I selected all these and I said data, use the dogs, it just went through and automatically placed a picture in each one of those boxes from that folder, allowing me to quickly do this. I can even do this with a text file for names. I don't think, right now I'm not going to go and open up Word and do that. I think I might have, oh, I do have one for dogs. I did. Excellent. So I could go in and create one for names as well. Now, I didn't set this up for any responsiveness, so you can see like if I needed to fix this, not a big deal. Like I was, looking at this and saying, this isn't working right. Look, also here, a little thing. Do you see how this got a little distorted? I can fix this after the fact too. I can just go back in and you'll see the symbols here. Say, can you fix that? But I'm also noticing maybe this needs to be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to make it a little smaller. Put it out here a little bit. Here we'll say, make that a little, it's not reacting very well. Here we go. Okay, and then go back. It's reliant on that original one, nudge it over a little bit. And now when I go back to my page, you'll see it's been moved over. I can fit the name in here. Again, not beautiful, but really easy to do. So if you have your design plan before you come in here, that's super easy. You'll notice that because I had this grow automatically as I added things, that it actually flexibly changed the height of this as well. But you'll see that now the pictures are no longer distorted because of the fact that I went in and just made sure that they were fixed. You can even do things like if I come in here, I could even take this guy and say, can you pin it to this edge all the time? So that if it did get stretched or whatever, that it would not move the upper left position. So lots of controls in these symbols that are extremely helpful. Okay, let's get into, I have to move quickly, so let me just look at this, all the things that we've included. Maybe this text is the right font. It's what I want to use all the time. So in fact, let me just go ahead and create a new clean text area. So I'm going to press T and I'm going to say, this is always going to be my head one. And I always want it to be, I'm pressing Command Option plus. But if you notice, I could change the size over here in my properties panel to the right. But notice that if I like this and I want to use it all the time, that I can go in to appearance and now it says no text style. But if I click on the plus sign, I can call this H1 or whatever my developers want me to call it. Typically, I try to stay away from designery things like cool headline and all that sort of stuff. I try to give it names that will align to CSS. I don't even need it anymore. But I'm going to undo that. But if I were to use this a bunch of times and then come in here and on one of these instances, they're like, oh, I want to use this gray instead, maybe a more of a blue gray, and I want it to be a different size. Maybe I want it to be a little bit bigger. You'll notice that now this instance, this appearance has an asterisk beside it saying, you went and just changed that style that you've made. I could either choose update and it will go and find every other instance and replace it, or I'm going to undo, Command Z, or I can say, I want to create a second one and this one is going to be called H1 blue or whatever. But you can do, I'm going to undo that. You can do either thing with it. You can create your styles, build your whole artwork. Somebody can come to you and say, the heading's the wrong font, and you can change it all at once. Okay, so let me go ahead and save one more type style. So I'm going to select this, and maybe I want to make it a little bit smaller. Command Option lesser than, and I am going to create a second one called H2, and then that's it. So I've got a couple styles. So far we've saved color, we've saved type, we've saved components, showed you how to do data, but let's take this to another level. Let me go ahead and maybe I'm going to build a gallery. So I'm going to say, I want another artboard. I'm going to throw a bunch of images in here. Image. I'm just going to go into the dogs. I'm going to take almost all these. They all get dropped in. Let me make sure that they're all selected. I make them a little bit smaller. So they're all stacked on top of each other here. I'm going to make them even smaller because I want to be able to put multiple ones on the page. So you can see that. Is that all I got? That is all I got. That's fine. But I can select them and just come to the properties panel and say tidy. Oh, there were more there. And it automatically creates a grid for me. So maybe this is the gallery. So I'm going to create a little nav bar. This is ugly, I know, but it's going to have some text in it. And then the text, it's going to say home. And then let me grab that. Where did I put it? Here it is. Let me put it on the right. There we go. So I've got home, and I'm going to make that white so you can see it a little bit better. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Let me just use this over here. There we go. And then I'm also going to option drag and say that I also want list here, and then one more. And again, excuse the ugliness, but I am trying to do this quickly. Gallery. And then I'm going to go and make this all a symbol. And so if I were to make this a symbol and call it bottom nav, and I'm not going to go ahead and do anything else to it, I can reuse it over and over again. So I might even take it and say, this gallery, this nav bar at the bottom, I want to fix it when everything else scrolls. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it, I'm holding my option key down. I'm going to put it at the bottom of this artboard. And make sure I've got the artboard selected. There we go. I'm going to put it at the bottom. And yeah, come on, bottom nav. There we go. We put it on top. Of course, nothing ever works right when you're trying to get it to work. Okay, so let me just clone that again. Instead of trying to find where I put it, I'm just going to grab it here. There we go. It says fixed, and then also we'll say fixed over here. We've got this here. So it's an ugly bottom nav, but by doing that, I was able to make it so that when the rest of this page is scrolling, that will stay fixed. I'm going to go into the prototyping. You'll notice that if I click in here and I choose that I want this to be linked to something else, that I can actually select this and say, prototype, I want you to go, and I have already grouped this, so that was not smart, but I want you to go to this other page. And so if I preview this, the other thing that I can do in here is, of course, click on this, and do you see how it's fixed at the bottom, but yet allows me to scroll. So I want to quickly go into the next step because I want to show you where this all goes. You're creating something, you're a designer, you hopefully make something a lot prettier than this, but it's got my color saved, it's got my symbols saved, it's got some buttons and text saved. It will even, it is so smart that like even if I make a rectangle here, let me just do one more. Even if I come in here and I choose that I want to put a fill in here, notice that inside a sketch, I can add fills. So I could even come in here and in the properties panel, click on plus and say, I want to add a fill, but this time I want to put a picture in. And so I can choose an image of a picture. And so now I have two fills. And you'll notice that if you're a Photoshop person, you'll notice that you can even come in and play with the opacity, the blending mode, all sorts of things so that you can change the order in which these appear. So I could put the color on top or the picture on the bottom, wherever I want it to go. But if I select this, let me go back in. Okay, image. So maybe I'll use darken. So I can come up with all kinds of combinations of things. I can put a border on this, and maybe the border I want is going to be darker. And then the border, I want it to be a thicker width, but I can also put multiple borders on here as well. So maybe I want to put a yellow border on here as well. I know this is crazy stuff, but I just want you to see the opportunities that you have with this, because I just created something with 2 fills, 2 strokes, and then I can go up to my appearance and say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead, let me move some of my UI here. I'm going to save this as image button, click OK, and now anytime I want to use that, notice that I can just go to layer style, this document, image button. I've got it all. Yet if I want to change this color, you know, I can do that, and then I can update it. Amazing where the power of this is. So keeping your stuff consistent is going to be really helpful. So I'm going to do one more thing with this, and then we're going to take questions. I did a lot of work for this. If I were done with this as a project, I would just go ahead and save it. But I'm going to go ahead and save this as dog library, even though it should be a little bit more organized than this. But I just want to show you how this works. I'm going to close it. I'm working on something else for the Rescue Dog Association, whatever it might be that I'm doing. I create a new document and I'm like, gee, I really wish I had all that content that I worked on in the previous job. So I can go to Sketch Preferences and I can choose Library. Hello, come on. Oh, it's over here. And I can choose Library, and I can say add a library, and I just find that file. I just go out to my desktop or wherever I saved it, and I select the file. Now, all those saved items that I did are available to me all the time. So I come in here, I make an artboard, mobile. I want to insert something. Notice if I do insert, now dog library is here. I can see all my symbols. So maybe I take the dog logo and I put it in. Maybe I want to use the text. So I make a rectangle and I go to appearance and I go to the drop-down menu, dog library. I want to use that red color. Maybe I want to put some type in. I click on my type and I choose from appearance, dog library, H2. And I've got that in here as well. So I'm reusing all this stuff. Now, if somebody goes back and they open that file, dog library, and they're like, you know what? We're going to change some of this stuff. Let me go into my symbols. Actually, I'm going to go in and change my appearance for something. We'll go back. So I'll go ahead and make a rectangle because this will be an easy switch. I'll apply one of those colors, but I'll change it. I'll just make it a little bit darker. And what I'll do is then update it. I'm going to press save. Now, if this works correctly, what will happen is that when I close this and go back, library updates available. And if I click on that, it says this was the old color, but here's the new one. Do you want to use the new one? Sure, of course. And it updates it. So this is how you maintain branding standards over, could be hundreds of different documents, maintaining the same color, the same logos. It doesn't do it just randomly. You have to actually give it approval. So if you don't like the update, you don't have to have it, but it makes things a lot easier. And then, of course, when you're all said and done, if this were actually a real document, I could come in here and I could choose, let's see, I'm going to make that exportable. I'm going to make some of these items exportable so you can see what's going to happen. Maybe the logo, make exportable. And I'm just going to go to a plugin, go to Zeppelin and say export all my artboards. Save and continue. and then we're going to take questions. So, remind me later. Okay. So, couple things. You can use Zeppelin, or you could, looks like I'm bringing up some old stuff, or you could just save your document right out of Sketch for previewing as well. But you'll notice that, let me go back to my dashboard. All right, so it's got, I have a bunch of stuff on here. Here's the one that I was working on. But notice that when I click on these items, that somebody can download them. They can download them as a vector image or bitmap, that they'll see the CSS. They can copy this. So it really does help translate all your branding standards from design to development. Crammed it all in. I think we got 7 minutes for questions.
That was great, Jennifer. Thank you. Yeah, we do have a question. Let's see. The first question is, when a design, this is from Irving, when a designer is passing a web page design to a developer, how can a developer easily see the specification of each component of that page and the space between the components? And maybe some of that is answered with Zeppelin.
I just kind of showed that, because you'll notice that when I'm in here, do you see how it's giving me, I'm using Zeppelin for this, which is free for one project, and I just keep adding everything to the same project, or you can subscribe to it. Irving, I don't know if he can unmute himself, but does this answer your question? Because this is like, instead of you sending specs, you would just actually, they would use Zeppelin, and then they could see all the spacing and where everything's placed and all that sort of stuff. Does that answer your question?
I don't know if Irving can. I don't think we have that turned on, but they can certainly ask another question if that doesn't. All right, yeah. They say yes. And I think there are definitely like other apps like InVision, I think, has products and things like that. So yeah, it's a good question though. Next question from Ruth. What's your process of sharing a sketch file with other designers so everyone sees that there are updates? So like on a team-based kind of approach.
Okay, so it does share that automatically. I don't know if I have an example here of one that looks a little bit better, but typically if I'm creating something like this, and we call it a design system, let me just do a file open. It's a lot neater than this, and we typically only let a small group of people edit it. So let me just see if I have here sketch basic symbols. But we create, I don't know why this was here when I needed it and now it's not. That's bizarre. We'll just go in here. Oh, there we go. So branding example, this might be it. We'll see. Yeah. So if you notice, we create a file that might just have a separate page. You can create a new page, as many pages as you want, and we put all the type symbols on there, or type changes. We put the colors in here. Doesn't matter what shape they're in, because you're just saving on a layer appearance. But this is what that file looks like. It doesn't look like an actual file. You don't even need artboards, but it gives you the opportunity to keep things really neat. And if we're making changes to this, we might just send an email out, but you just saw, hopefully, that when you do make a change, your designers, if you've got 100 people on the team, they're seeing that icon. It's not going to just randomly change their file unless they give approval for it. So it is kind of communicating it with them. And obviously, if you're using anything else like Asana or any other communication technique, Slack, it's good to probably let them know. But nothing's going to happen without them knowing it.
Okay. So it sounds like, is this file being shared into a different file that's not shared, or are people basically just accepting a change if you make a change to the same file in there?
So here's the thing that's cool about Sketch. You can save this file. Like if this is our library file, I can save this up on a server where everyone can access it. And then if I make a change to it, it automatically will send them that message and let them update it or not. So it's a pretty simple process.
Gotcha. Great. I don't have any other questions on here. I think one observation just from me kind of watching, I I'm impressed by like how many like detailed features there are that just make it so much more powerful. It's clear like that they must update this a lot based on user feedback, because a lot of the things I saw in there, I'm just like, wow, I'm sure that would be like super useful if somebody
Yeah.
knew about it. Is there a way, like, how do you stay on top of all of that?
They do send messages. If you actually have a subscription to it, they'll send you emails and let you know in the updates what's new. You can also come in and check for updates. And when you do that, it also will take you to a page that will tell you what's new. But the cool thing about Sketch is it was really built for people who might be developers rather than just designers. So you'll notice that it's still, even though it's super powerful, the UI is really simple and it's really clean. So it's not overwhelming. So if you just want to do the most simple things like creating shapes and rectangles and representing UI, you can do that really easily. And then once you dig in, you can start discovering all the other cool things, the more powerful things it has, but you don't have to know that to build a prototype.
Do you have any recommendations for people just getting started with it? Because it seems like maybe some people would have experience with Illustrator, for example, but for somebody coming to Sketch brand new, is there any like advice you can give them to sort of help them get started?
Just try to build something. We happen to have, we do have classes in this, but we happen to have a $29 3-hour class that we're doing as part of UXPA, and it's in November. If anyone's interested, you can provide my email because we haven't publicly posted that, but we have a 3-hour session. I think it's early November. That is just to kind of get people launched. So it's less than $10 an hour for a training session. It's remote, but that's an option, or just taking whatever regular classes. Obviously, you can look online for lots of resources. I'm sure that they have some as well. They're pretty good about education. Sketch, their website supplies tons of tutorials as well. But I think the best thing to do, really UI is simple. UI is a bunch of boxes and shapes and text. Just start building something. And I think most people will find that it's intuitive and pretty easy to use.
Okay. And then Irving had one last question about how Sketch maybe compares to Adobe Xd.
Okay, so Xd is very cool. I know both. I love both. Xd does some cool stuff with animations so that you can have menus like skid down or pop out, and timings and all kinds of cool things. But the issue that I see with Sketch with a lot of our large corporations is that if you want to save a library, it has to go to the cloud, the Adobe cloud. And many of our pharmaceutical companies and other companies that are worried about security don't want to save their branding libraries in something that they don't control. And so if you notice Sketch, I could save a library on a shared server that has security to it and not worry about it being posted out in the public or being hacked or something. But other than that, they are almost identical in how they work. I use Xd most of the time just because I'm on a PC and Sketch is not available on the PC yet, but interchangeable. The library is the big thing, the fact that you can't save the library on a private server. The other big thing, though, is that not only does Xd offer animations, it also offers scripts for like really easy rollovers, pop-up windows, things like that. So they do have some differences, but if you can use one, you can use the other really easily.
Great. Well, thank you, Jennifer. We have one last question from Ruth. Have you tried InVision, and do you prefer Zeppelin?
Okay, I have tried InVision. I'm not a big fan, just because mostly the cost. So when we're working with a team, it can get kind of expensive. Most of the clients I work with are working with Zeppelin. For whatever reason, it seems to be more popular. So they probably do pretty much the same thing, but I think Zeppelin is, for a subscription cost, people find it to be more reasonable. And so I just end up working in Zeppelin most of the time.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. That was really informative, and we thank you for your time. It's much appreciated. And just before we close out, I just want to remind folks that we are always looking for volunteers. So Leslie and myself handle a lot, but we would love to share those responsibilities with others. So if you have time and expertise, we're looking for folks to help out with social media, running these meetings, doing some of the recording in Zoom and handling that, as well as other things, updating the website, stuff like that. So if you are interested, please just reach out to us via our website, design4drupal.org, and we can be in touch.
Perfect. And thank you very much, Jennifer. Also, it was a great presentation. And for everybody that wants to come back and relook at this again, the recording will be on designfordrupal.org. There will be a link there, so you can go back and catch up on all the great information Jennifer presented and share this with your colleagues as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining.